Hello, we're going to do our 1.4 notes today, solving absolute value equation. Let's write some vocab here. An absolute value equation is an equation containing an absolute value expression then you solve by making two related equations. Okay, and the other vocab here is going to be extraneous solution. Extraneous solution is where an apparent solution, it's an apparent solution that must be rejected because it does not work. Okay, so if you see solutions, we go back and check them. If it looks like it should work, but when you go back and check it and it actually does not work, that's called an extraneous solution. So let's look at our core concepts here. Properties of absolute values. These are just things that will always work. So if you have the absolute value of something called A, then just know that that is always going to be greater than or equal to 0. What that means is that an absolute value of a number is always positive. Also, if you take the absolute value of a negative number, it is worth the absolute value of its positive counterpart. So the absolute value of negative A is also the same as the absolute value of A. We can split some things up. If you have the absolute value of two things being multiplied, A times B, then we can split that up into just the absolute value of A times the absolute value of B. And then the last thing is also true, that if you have two things being divided, so the absolute value of A divided by B, that is equal to the absolute value of A divided by the absolute value of B, as long as B is not 0, because you can never divide by 0. And then keep going with the core concepts here. To solve an absolute value equation, you have to solve the related linear equation. So notice here, absolute value of something equals C, long as C is greater than 0, so it has to be, absolute value always has to be set to something that's positive, 0 or positive. Then what we do is we write it as two separate equations. You can write it as ax plus b equals c, which is normal, or you write a second one, so you write or ax plus b can equal negative c. And this is because an absolute value is the distance a number is away from 0. So I can either be 4 spaces to the right of 0, which is positive 4, or 4 spaces to the left of 0, which is negative 4. So the original equation is saying my distance from 0 is, let's say, 4. So that means my equation can either equal positive 4 or it can equal negative 4, because 4 and negative 4 are both 4 spaces away from 0. Now, it also mentions down here, says when c is less than 0, the absolute value equation has no solution, because absolute value always indicates a number that is not negative. So an example there would be if I have absolute value of x plus 3 equals negative 4, because we have this negative here, then we would write no solution. Okay? Now, let's go down to the examples. How do we solve these? And then we'll graph them. The first step into solving is you have to write as seen without the absolute value symbols. the absolute value symbols. The second thing that we do, the second equation is you write as seen, but equal to a negative. So you're going to write as seen without the absolute value symbols, but equal to a negative. So let's get into that. Let's solve this first one here. The first thing I'm going to write, I write my first equation here. I'll do it in color so you can see. First equation, I'm going to write as x minus 4 equals 6. And then the second equation, I'm going to write as x minus 4 equals negative 6. So now I'm going to solve this. I'm going to add 4 to both sides. I'm going to get x equals 10. And then I'm going to add 4 to both sides here. And I'm going to get x equals negative 2. So the answer here would be x equals 10 or x equals negative 2. And then to graph this, what we're going to do is we are going to make sure I get a little line here. I'm going to put my numbers on here. Let's go with the negative 3, negative 2, we go 0, eventually we get a 10, we get an 11. We're just spreading things out here. And to graph this, I'm going to put a closed circle above negative 2 and one on 10. I'm just putting this in context so I know some numbers that are in front and behind. I know this is not to scale, but that would be our graph. All right, over to B, first equation. Write it, 3x plus 1 equals, whoa, notice how it says negative 5. The original can't be a negative. So right there, we cross this off, say, nope, no solution, because an absolute value cannot equal a negative number. All right, so let's page. There are 3 on your own. So when you're done, I will tell you the answers and I'll make a quick little graph. So go ahead and pause the video and then unpause it when you're done. 3, 2, 1, go. All right, welcome back. The first one here, you should have had that x equals 10 or x equals negative 10. And on a number line, you'd have negative 10 and positive 10. And just know that the negative's on the left, the positive's on the right. Number 2, you should have got the x equals 5 or x equals negative 3. So on a number line, you're going to have your negative 3 more on the left side. And then you're going to have the positive 5 on the right. And just make sure that your graph is something like this. Then what I want you to do is for number 3, you should have no solution. All right, for example number 2 now, there's an extra step here, extra step. First, get absolute value by itself. That's the first step now. Before making 2 equations. So what that means here is I'm going to add 10 to both sides. Absolute value of 3x plus 9 equals 6. Double check. It's set equal to a positive. So at that point, I can do my 2 equations. My first one is going to be 3x plus 9 equals 6. And my second equation is 3x plus 9 equals negative 6. The question didn't ask us to graph, so we're not going to do any graphing. We're just going to solve. So I'm going to subtract 9 from both sides of the equation in this first one, get 3x equals negative 3. And when I divide, I get x equals negative 1. And that's okay. That is okay to have a negative as an answer. You just don't want your absolute value equaling a negative. Let's go to the next one. Subtract 9 from both sides. I get 3x equals negative 15. Divide by 3, and you're going to get x equals negative 5. So the answer is x equals negative 1 or x equals negative 5. Okay, let's go to example 3 here. In a cheerleading competition, the minimum length of a routine is 4 minutes. The maximum length of a routine is 5 minutes. What's the absolute value equation that represents the minimum and maximum lengths? Here's our setup here. All right, your setup or blueprint. Absolute value of x minus the halfway point equals the distance from the halfway point. So how does that look in this problem? In this problem right here, I'm going to go with, I'm going to make a little number line here just to show you what this would look like. If I have 4 minutes, that's the minimum, and the largest is 5, what's the halfway point? And the halfway point is 4.5. So we need to know that. And then we need to figure out this distance right here. What's that distance? So here's how we write our equation. We're going to write x minus 4.5 equals, that distance here is 0.5. That's how you set this up. Okay, so that's how we set it up. And from there, we're going to go ahead and solve this equation. Actually, so we're not going to solve. It just says write an absolute value equation. Sorry, it doesn't say to solve it because we know what the answer is. It's 4 minutes and 5 minutes. This is our lovely answer here. So that's writing the absolute value equation. So it does require a little bit of thinking there. All right. There are some on your owns here. Go ahead and pause the video. And when you're done, I will come back and tell you the answers. 3, 2, 1, go. All right, welcome back. Answers here. You should have had x equals 6 or x equals negative 2. Number 5 would have been x equals negative 3 halves or x equals negative 11 over 2. Number 6 is x equals 1 or x equals negative 3 fifths. And then for number 7, you should have had absolute value of x minus 24 equals 8. Again, if you don't get those, you can always reach out to me individually and I can help you with this at a later date. All right, let's go ahead and turn the page again. There we go. Let's see, where are we going from here? We are going to not do example number 4. We're going to skip example 4. We're not going to solve two absolute value equations by themselves, which we just skip this on your own. And we're going to go right into examples 5 and 6. Sorry, not 6, example 5. We're not going to do 6 because it has two absolute value equations. So we're just going to go right to example number 5. And we're going to do the same thing we did before. If the absolute value symbols are by themselves, and we notice that it's set equal to a positive, so 4x is positive, we're going to write it twice. The first time we're writing 2x plus 12 equals 4x, and then the second time we're going to write 2x plus 12 equals negative 4x. And now because we have variables on both sides, we want to check our solutions and see if there's any extraneous solutions. So when there's variables on both sides, I'm going to make this. When there's variables on both sides, check for extraneous or bad solutions. Okay, so let's go ahead and solve these. First one, I'm going to subtract 2x from both sides. See all my x's together, I get 12 equals 2x, divide both sides by 2, I get x equals 6. Do the next one, subtract 2x from both sides. I'm going to get 12 equals negative 6x, and when I divide both sides by -6, I get -2 equals x. So I want to check these. So when I check them, go over to the first one here, I want to check 2 times 6 plus 12, the absolute value, does it equal 4 times 6? So I'm going to get 12 plus 12, that's 24. So does 24 equal 24? It works, because 4 times 6 is 24. Let's go to the second equation. Let's type in -2 in the original equation. 2 times -2 plus 12. Does that absolute value equal 4 times -2? So it's going to give me -4 plus 12, which gives me 8. The absolute value of 8 is 8. 4 times -2 is -8. Those do not match. So the -2 we cross off, cannot be an answer. So our only solution is x equals 6. X equals 6. All right. Only thing that's left is for you to do on your own number 10 and 11. So when you get back, I will go over those answers. So go ahead and do on your own 10 and 11. 3, 2, 1, and go. All right. I did these really quickly. Let's hope I didn't mess up, but I got for number 10 that you should have had only one answer, which was x equals 6. And then for number 11, I got that you should have x equals 1 or x equals 1/2. So you actually had two answers for that one. So yeah, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out. If not, nice job with the notes today, and we'll see you here next time.